Hi, my name is Brian Nash. I'm the host of a genealogical podcast called How We Got Here. And today in this video, I'm going to share how I found out that I could be the rightful heir to the throne of England. Well, it's a little far-fetched, but it's possible. I found out that I'm related to a king of England. In fact, not just one, but multiple kings of England. So maybe I should move to a place more fitting for my role and my responsibility. So, which king of England am I related to? Well, it's an older one. He's actually my 25th great grandfather, and like I said, I'm related to more than one, but this is the one I'm going to sort of concentrate on today. This is him, Henry III. You might have heard of him. Shakespeare wrote a little play about him. But Shakespeare to write plays about a few of the kings. But you take a look. See the nose, look at it, the eyes. Do you see the resemblance? Maybe. What about now? Do you see the resemblance now? Could be there. I don't know. But if it is, he's definitely a good-looking fellow. So, how did I find out that I'm related to the king, or King Henry III? Let's go back to where all good genealogy starts, in research. So, I use a site quite frequently called WikiTree, and it's a great little site. And there it is there, and there's my profile. There's a lot of neat features of WikiTree. Now, I'm going to warn you, you need to make sure you do due diligence, just like any genealogical site when you put information up. But it's a great site and has a few neat little tools. So here's my profile on WikiTree, and over here is Henry III, Henry Plantagenet of England. One of the great things about WikiTree is at the bottom of every person's profile, you can actually check out if you have a genealogical relationship. So I clicked on this, and it told me I had none. But the reason is it's only searching 15 generations. Now, I've actually made something to help myself just understand the way generations work. And it's this little chart here. And as you can see, I start with myself. There's one of me. I have my year of birth. And basically, I'm saying that since there's only one of me, 100% of my DNA would match my DNA, which makes sense. So the next generation is my parents. Same thing, there's two of them. Approximate year was 1945, which is actually smack dab in the middle of when it would be an average of my two parents. But I just used 25 years as sort of a marker to say a generation. That gives me 50%. So when I look at this and I actually want to know my percentage, I know that there are certain things that will happen. But if I go back to here, so I go to 15 generations, 1620. So when I actually look up Henry III, he was born in 1207. So that's nowhere near close. So I know it's probably not going to be within that 15 generations. The good thing though is it does actually let me search up to 30 generations. When I do that, right here, number 28 would be Henry III, and he's my 25th great grandfather. And that's quite interesting. And so if I go back to my chart here, and I go down, and let's take a look then. So there's my 22nd great grandparents. So if I go down farther, my 25th great grandparents. So I have 134,217,728 great grandparents. And generations, it's off, but actually if you see this calculator, It's off by about 70 years, which isn't too bad over 28 generations. Um, the percentage of DNA would be so minuscule, but this is something to sort of really wrap your head around. And again, um, Wikitree has a kind of a neat tool I like to use. It's called a fan chart. And this is the fan chart. As far as it goes, it only actually lets me do 11 generations on this. Um, but if I go, as you see, as you go more generations, it sort of starts, it divides your parents and then goes out. You can see it, that number steadily increase. So if I look at it with 134,217,728 great grandparents, so half of that, so 100, so sorry, 66, 67 approximately million great grandfathers I would have to fill in that chart to get it complete. Just to put that into perspective, when I actually, when I actually look at, I wanted to know, well, how likely that was it that I relayed to Henry III. So I Googled what was the population of the British Isles in approximately 1240. And this is what I came up with. In 1200, the population was still below 3 million. The population of Wales and Scotland were sparse and well under 500,000 each. Um, so there's about 4 million people in the British Isles, well, in Great Britain, not including Ireland at this point. So knowing that's where my ancestry is from, I was pretty likely to be related to him. So it wasn't really a big thing. So I really can't make any claims to the crown. I can't make any claims that I'm a rightful heir. And in fact, I would just have to go back because of the way he passes. Even if his line had continued, there'd be no way, because just going back to my father wasn't I wasn't the oldest of the sons. I wasn't the firstborn. My father wasn't either, so it would have been lost just working backwards there. But it is kind of really neat, and it is a neat thing to see, and it actually opens up DNA, and it opens up the way you watch movies, and read and have an understanding of things when you see them in history. Like I said, he's my 25th great grandfather here, and I don't know if you've watched Braveheart. I have, and I really consider myself a Scot, and I knew that his son was Edward Longshanks, who's the protagonist in Braveheart, the evil king who's out to crush and take over the Scottish throne. And I was kind of excited when I did this that, hey, listen, I'm not related to him. Not directly, not to Edward. I was related to Henry's son Edmund, who wasn't the King of England. So I thought, well, that's pretty good. I'm happy about that. Problem is, when I actually looked at Edward here, and I did the same thing. So I knew that because Edmund is Edward's brother, that would technically make Edward my 24th great granduncle. Which, okay, I can live with that, not direct line. But curiosity got the best of me. So again, I scrolled down to the bottom. And I want to see my relationship. Again, it's not going to find him in the first 30 generations. I know that. My chart tells me that, and my understanding just from before tells me that. So let's go and look the next 30. So he's not my 24th great granduncle. He's my 24th great grandfather. So I am related to Edward Longshanks directly. I'm a descendant. Not something to be proud of, Brian, not as a Scot. But it's interesting. Like I said, he's also my 24th great granduncle, which could explain those numbers. Because if I look now, like I said, these numbers, well, if I divide them in half, because half great grandmothers and half great grandfathers. Um, you know, so already Henry III is twice my 25th great grandfather. At least twice that I know of, that I've actually checked. So really makes that number a lot smaller in a way. But it's really interesting when you start looking at that. The DNA percentages are really interesting too, because you think, if you want to prove something, it's going to get harder. And that's if I had actual copy of these persons, like I said, um, my 10th my 10th great grandfather, I would have 0.02%. So that's 13 generations back. Doesn't seem like a lot. I mean, it's mid 1600s, so 400 years ago. I'm not going to have that much. Even when I go back to, you know, about the time of the American Revolution, the time when my ancestor actually, a lot of them started arriving in Canada. It was around the early 1700s, late 1800s. I have less than 1% of DNA shared. So if I was to have my fifth great grandfather and test his DNA, and was able to have a copy and um, test mine against it, I should share 0.78%. It's not a lot. So it's really amazing when you start looking at DNA and you start looking at those relationships you find, and when your DNA provider starts matching up cousins. So don't get discouraged if you see small numbers in your DNA results. But I'm going to talk about DNA on another episode of my podcast, and also probably do another video specifically about DNA. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this gave you informed some information, and let you know where to sort of look and investigate your own ancestry and see who you might be related to. So thank you for taking the time to watch. As always, I really appreciate you. And when you get a chance, I'd love for you to go to my website. It's at www.howwegothere.ca, or you can listen to my podcast, How We Got Here, on your favorite podcast provider. I'm on most of them now. This is Spotify. You can go there and you can definitely search me. Same with Apple Podcast. So thank you, and you have a great day.